Hello there, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Star Wars Playtime. It means a lot to me that you're watching, and I wish you all the best for 2022. One of the first games I ever did for this series was Super Star Wars. It's one of the first Star Wars games I ever played, and I loved it as a kid. Returning to it as an adult was a bit strange though, as I still loved it, but I viewed it with fresh eyes. I played it so much as a kid because I had nothing else, and my passion for Star Wars blinded me to some of its faults. Super Star Wars is a hard game, made even more so by the lack of lives and losing your blaster power up when you die. Maybe it's that reason that's kept me away from its sequels for so long. I have both Super Empire Strikes Back and Super Return of the Jedi on my shelf, but it's because I didn't play them as a kid that I don't have that attachment to them. In fact, when I've tried to play them over the years, I've never really been able to get past the first couple of levels. The thought of having to start again when I die fills me with dread, so having the save states of the SNES Classic will help me out a lot. Let's get into the game. Much like Super Star Wars, Super Empire Strikes Back loosely follows the events of The Empire Strikes Back. Starting on Hoth, you make your way through the icy tundras fighting Wampers and probe droids before making your way back to Echo Base. You take control of a land speeder and fight AT-STs and AT-ATs at the Battle of Hoth. You escape Echo Base just before the Empire cracks it open and make your way through the dangerous asteroid field. This is where the game splits, with Luke Skywalker heading to Dagobah to train as a Jedi, and Han, Leia and Chewie heading to Cloud City on Bespin to hide out. Eventually, Luke makes his way to Cloud City and battles Darth Vader while Han is frozen in carbonite. Much like most of Super Star Wars took place on Tatooine, a lot of Super Empire Strikes Back occurs on Hoth. In fact, out of the 22 levels, 12 of them are on Hoth and its associated environments. A lot of the Hoth levels are very short though, they're basically transition screens to take you from one environment to the next. Take the AT-AT levels after your snowspeeder crashes. It consists of 3 stages, none of which are very long. The first is outside the AT-AT, where you shoot some aerial enemies in a crashing snowspeeder, then climb up its leg into the interior. The second stage takes you through the inside of the AT-AT. It's the longest section of this series of levels, but it's still pretty short. Eventually you emerge onto the top of the AT-AT and the third stage, straight into a boss fight. Taken together, it's a decent length for a set of levels, but on their own, they're lacking in length. You don't have the ability to select characters anymore. Luke, Han and Chewie are all playable at some point, but the level you're playing dictates the character you'll get. This makes sense for Empire Strikes Back, as there are times when these characters are separated from each other. Chewie's health is now also the same as Han and Luke's, not significantly more like in Super Star Wars. Super Empire Strikes Back came out in 1993, only a year after Super Star Wars. It uses the same engine with a couple of extras built in. As such, weapons are the same as from Super Star Wars. In order of least powerful to most powerful, you have Blaster, Flame, Seeker, Rapid Ion and Plasma. Luke starts with a blaster and his lightsaber, while Han and Chewie start with Flame. A new power for Luke is the ability to use the Force. After meeting Yoda, there's an auto-scrolling level on Dagobah where you need to find these abilities. There's Elevation, Mind Control, Slowdown, Saber Control, which is really Saber Throw, Deflect, Invisible, Freezing, and Healing. They have varying degrees of usefulness, but I found myself using Elevation and Heal the most. Elevation is particularly useful in the platforming sections because Super Empire Strikes Back has the same shrapnel mechanics that Super Star Wars has. You will fall off platforms to your death, and Elevation helps you climb back up. Healing is also very valuable as it means you don't need to rely on finding hearts to refill your health bar. Along with all the items returning from Super Star Wars, you also have Force Orbs to replenish your Force gauge so that you can continue to use your Force powers. The time power-up has been removed since there is no timer in this game. The key to getting through this game is simple: staying alive. Once you get the plasma weapon, enemies become a lot easier to deal with, but dying is a huge problem as it takes your character's starting weapon right back to the beginning, blaster for Luke or flame for Han and Chewie. It's a big factor in why I wanted to play with save states. Going back to a weak weapon is incredibly painful. In previous attempts to play Super Empire Strikes Back, I got a bit lost in the level design. This time I enjoyed it a lot more. As long as you keep heading to the right, you'll get where you need to be. There's just many different paths to get there. I only got lost once, and that was because I backtracked to try and find some more weapon power-ups. There was a lot more variation in the Mode 7 levels as well. Mode 7 is a graphics mode used by the Super Nintendo to simulate a 3D environment. Where Super Star Wars only had Land Speeder and X-Wing Mode 7 levels, Super Empire Strikes Back had a Snow Speeder, Millennium Falcon and X-Wing levels, each with their own flair. The X-Wing approach to Cloud City split the screen in two with a layer of clouds, and the Snow Speeder level had a tow cable for taking down the AT-ATs. Even the bosses felt improved upon lore-wise. You get a Wampa probe droid and the head of an AT-AT boss fights on Hoth, and Boba Fett's ship Slave One, and Darth Vader in boss fights on Cloud City, all of which have their roles in the movie. Even the AT-ST and Cat boss fights in Echo Base feel at home because this is an invading Imperial force. Of course they'd bring some weapons like that. All of these feel a lot more relevant than fighting a lava monster in the bottom of a sandcrawler or the Death Star's tractor beam core. The game still tries to throw a lot at you. A few stages have a lot of enemies on the screen at once, and it makes the game lag quite heavily. If you got the Seeker weapon, then that intensifies as the bullets try to track enemies rather than travelling in a straight line. Remember how I said I enjoyed the level design this time around? The exploring was fun, but it shouldn't have been at the expense of abilities. I played the whole level where you're supposed to be finding force powers without finding one, and I didn't realise it until I got to Darth Vader and wondered why the hell he was so hard to beat. I ended up looking up a guide and seeing that I'd missed getting the force powers and had to start again. Luckily there's a password system that players can use to go back to a particular level, but it means that you have to continue from that level. It's impossible to go back and then jump forward again with what you've collected. Super Empire Strikes Back wasn't as terrible as I thought it was going to be, but also just as hard as I expected. Like I said earlier, staying alive and keeping your weapon power up is the key to doing well in this game. The Force abilities make Luke a very powerful character and allow you to skip a lot of the issues I had, like being pushed off ledges. If you can keep your Force meter charged, that is. All in all, it's a solid follow-up to Super Star Wars. It's different enough that it feels new, and the new features in the Mode 7 levels are pretty cool. It's still a very hard game though, and I would not like to attempt it on anything but easy. I'm also forever glad that I could play with save states. With all that in mind, I give Super Empire Strikes Back my Star Wars playtime rating of Return to Tatooine. Thank you so much for watching this video. I've enjoyed putting it together and I really hope you've enjoyed watching it. If you have, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe so you can see more of my content and give me advice on what games you want to see me play next. But thank you and we'll see you next time.